Okay, so we are diving into Alex Hormozi's $100 AV today. And I know you're looking to refine how you attract potential customers. And let me tell you, this book is just a gold mine of really practical advice.
Yeah, it's interesting. Right out of the gate, Hormozi, he challenges this big misconception that I think a lot of businesses fall into, which is that we need more leads. But he actually argues that most businesses, their real problem isn't getting more leads; it's turning those leads into really engaged prospects.
He's totally flipping the script there. So it's not just about the quantity, it's really about the quality and what you do with those leads once you have them. Which kind of leads us to, I guess, the concept of the lead magnet, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's a big proponent of creating these irresistible lead magnets. And you can kind of think of it like, how can you offer something that's really high value, that really solves a problem for your target audience? And you give that to them in exchange for, maybe their contact info, something like that. And so it's really this idea that by giving that immense value up front, you're building that trust and you're positioning yourself as that go-to solution when they need you.
And he even takes it a step further because he talks about not being afraid to give away your secrets, which I think at first seems kind of counterintuitive. Like, why would you reveal your best stuff for free, right?
Yeah, it definitely seems counterintuitive. But,
Yeah.
I think what it comes down to is he argues that like 99% of people won't buy from you right away anyway, but everybody forms an opinion about you. And so it's like, how can you showcase your expertise? How can you showcase your credibility?
So it's like that peek behind the curtain, so to speak,
Yeah.
to show them you know what you're talking about. Didn't he share an anecdote about this, actually, about how this really worked for him?
Yeah, he did. He was talking about how he kind of stumbled upon this idea of lead magnets accidentally. He was trying to, I think, sell a weight loss webinar or something.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really gaining a lot of traction. And then he started offering like a case study on his weight loss method as like a free download. And I mean, things just totally took off for him. I think people are just really drawn to like those tangible, real world examples.
Yeah, it's that classic show, don't tell,
Mm.
give them the proof in their hands. And it's much more powerful than just like this general webinar. And so
Mhm.
I think that's a really key takeaway, too, to not be afraid to share real world examples, results, things like that in your lead magnets.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way to build that trust and actually show them the value that you offer.
Okay, so we've established lead magnets are important, they're crucial. But how do we ensure that they're really effective?
So he had a really clever tactic that he talked about, and he calls it the narrow problem, broader solution approach. And essentially what he means is your lead magnet should focus on a very specific pain point. And what this does is it makes the solution, the thing that you offer, which maybe costs money, it makes that the logical next step.
I see, I see. So can you give us a real world example of what that might look like?
Yeah, so let's say, for example, you're in real estate.
Hmm.
So instead of having just this very like broad home selling guide,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You could create like a hyper local guide that's about maximizing your home's value if you're trying to list, in today's market. So it's very specific.
Just specific.
And it really helps to address that narrow problem of like, how do I get the best price for my home right now in this market?
Hmm.
And then that naturally leads into that broader solution, which is you, the real estate agent, who can then help them sell their home.
That makes so much sense. So you're solving that immediate problem for them with the lead magnet, and then it positions you as the expert to solve the bigger picture.
Exactly. And I think this can apply to really any industry. It's just about thinking, okay, what's that very specific pain point? How can I create a lead magnet that helps address that?
Mm.
And then from there, you showcase, here's how my core offering can help you take it even further. So you're building that bridge from, here's this small problem, but then here's the ultimate solution that I can provide.
I love that bridge analogy. And then to top it all off, he also says, don't limit yourself to just one format for your lead magnet. Like offer it as an ebook, a physical book, an audiobook, a video.
Yeah, it's like a whole buffet of lead magnets.
Exactly. So you're catering to different learning styles, different preferences.
Yeah, and plus when you're doing that, it gives you the opportunity to test out like which format resonates most with your audience.
It's all about experimenting and finding what works. And speaking of finding what works, he dives into some really interesting advanced lead generation tactics. And one that really stood out to me was this idea of warm reach outs. So leveraging your existing network for referrals, introductions. He calls it like an untapped gold mine. And I totally see why.
Yeah, it's so true. It's amazing how often it's overlooked, but I mean, people are just so much more receptive to recommendations when it's coming from somebody they already know,
Yeah.
like, and trust.
For sure, for sure. And he even gives this really like simple framework. He calls if the ACA framework for like warm outreach, which is acknowledge, compliment, ask. It almost seems too easy.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes it so powerful, because it is simple. So you acknowledge what they said, which shows you're listening.
Yeah.
Then you offer this genuine compliment. You
Yeah.
want to create that connection. And then you steer the conversation towards your offer.
Yeah, and it's such a natural flow, right? Because you're having this conversation with them, and then it's a very natural bridge to, hey, by the way, I do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because it's coming from somebody they already know, that trust is already there.
Totally, totally.
And then he also talks about, like, once you're having that conversation, make it really, really easy for them to say yes.
Yeah.
Like, offer something for free in exchange for, like, maybe a small commitment. So maybe like a free consultation or, a trial of your product or access to some content.
It's like that low-risk way for them to kind of get a taste of what you offer.
Exactly. And then that can lead to that bigger commitment down the line.
Love it, love it.
Now, another powerful tactic he talks about is content marketing. And I think, the way he frames it is it's not just about teaching. It's about reminding people. Because a lot of times people need to hear your message multiple times before it actually sinks in.
Right, it's about staying top of mind. So how do you keep putting that message in front of them in a way that feels natural and not like, salesy?
Yeah, that's the key, right? You don't want to be repetitive. You want to be providing value each time.
Right.
And I think he gives a really great framework for that, which is, he calls it like a hook, retain, reward structure.
Okay.
So with your content, you need that hook to really capture their attention up front.
All right.
Then you need to give them valuable information to keep them engaged. And then, of course, deliver on that promise, give them that reward so that they come back wanting more.
Yeah, like a good movie.
Exactly.
You've got that initial hook, and then you got to keep them on the edge of their seats and then deliver a really satisfying resolution.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to leave them hanging.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once you have that content strategy, he talks about, like, how do you scale it? And one approach he uses, which I really like, is called puddles to oceans.
Okay.
And the idea is, instead of, like, trying to be everything to everyone, really start by dominating a really specific niche, a very narrow area of content. And then, as you build that momentum, as you build that expertise, you can then start to branch out into these broader topics.
So don't try to boil the ocean right away. Just start with a puddle. And you can always make that puddle bigger.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got warm outreach. We've got content marketing. He also talks about, cold outreach, which that can feel a little bit intimidating, especially if you're not used to, reaching out to people who have no idea who you are.
Yeah, it definitely can. And it does require, a very systematic approach.
For sure.
But he does give some really, like, clear steps
Okay.
to make it, not so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So the first thing is you need to, like, build really targeted lists, right? So you're not just blasting out, generic messages to everybody you can find.
You got to be strategic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the thinking about, okay, if you could only reach out to 100 people, who would those 100 people be?
Right.
Using software, using brokers, manual research, whatever you need.
Mm-hmm.
Really taking that time to find the right people.
And then crafting the right message for those people. Well,
Exactly. Yeah, because once you have that list, then it's about, like, how do you craft a message that's really compelling?
mm-hmm.
Because you want to, really highlight the value you provide, but also, again, make it really, really easy for them to say yes.
Okay, so what's the secret sauce there? What makes for a compelling message?
It's really a lot of those same principles we've been talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, really focusing on the benefits, addressing their pain points,
Yeah.
making it crystal clear why they should care. And even in those initial messages, thinking about, like, okay, can I offer them something for free?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's, again, a free consultation, a free trial, or, some piece of content that's super, super valuable.
That low-risk taste of what you can do.
Exactly.
I love it. And then the last thing he gets into is paid advertising, which, we all know that requires an investment, but he says it can be a really, really powerful accelerator.
Yeah, it can if you do it right.
If you do it right, which is key.
Yeah, it's not just throwing money at the problem.
Right.
He actually outlines these, like, 3 distinct phases. So he calls them track money, lose money strategically, and print money.
Okay, I love the labels. I'm not going to lie. Can you break those down a little bit?
Yeah, so track money,
Yeah.
that's that first phase.
Yeah.
And it's really all about making sure you have those systems in place to actually track your return on investment.
Yeah.
You need to know, like, where's the money going and what's it actually generating?
Like a financial dashboard for your marketing effort.
Exactly. You need to know your numbers.
Yeah.
And then you have lose money strategically, which sounds a little counterintuitive.
It does. It does.
But it's this idea that you need to be willing to experiment and, potentially lose some money up front
Right.
to figure out what works.
Gotcha.
So testing out, different platforms, different audiences, different messaging.
So calculated experimentation.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not just, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. You're being really thoughtful about it. And then once you figure out, okay, this is working, that's when you move to print money.
Yeah.
And that's where you really start to scale up your spending on those things that you've proven are working.
So you find the golden nuggets and then you go all in.
Exactly.
Now, what about businesses that maybe don't have a ton of capital to throw at paid advertising? What are their options?
Yeah. So he has a really interesting concept called client-financed acquisition.
Okay.
And basically what it boils down to is structuring your pricing in a way so that essentially the initial purchase, that's covering the cost of acquiring that customer.
Okay.
And then that allows you to take those profits, reinvest them back into getting even more customers.
So your customers are essentially paying for the acquisition of new customers.
Yeah, in a way.
Which is brilliant.
It is, right? It's this beautiful cycle.
Love it.
And he talks about, it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be something as simple as, offering an upsell or an add-on during that initial purchase.
Yeah, just increasing that average customer value.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about warm outreach, content marketing, cold outreach, paid advertising. And I think it's really interesting how he transitions in the book. It's like, okay, we've talked about these individual tactics, but now let's talk about the bigger picture of building a system.
Yeah, like a well-oiled machine
Exactly.
that's constantly bringing in new leads.
Yeah, so tell me more about that.
So he has this framework, he calls it more, better, new. Yeah, so it's actually a very simple framework, but it's really powerful. So more basically means double down on what's already working, right? So if you see, a specific lead magnet is converting really well or a certain outreach strategy is working, don't be afraid to just go all in on that.
So recognize those early wins and just really milk them for what they're worth before you move on to the next shiny object.
Exactly. And then you have better, which is all about this idea of continuous improvement.
Mm.
So, even when something's working, there's always room to make it better.
Always be tweaking, right?
Always be tweaking, yeah. So are your ad campaigns really resonating? Could your lead magnet be even more irresistible?
So even when you think you've got it, there's always that extra little, 1% you can improve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then finally, you have new, which is don't be afraid to explore uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe you test out a new platform or experiment with a different format for your content, or maybe even just reach out to a whole new demographic. You just never know what you might find.
So it's that balance, right? Maximizing what's already working, but also always striving to improve it, but then also leaving room for that exploration, that new.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then, to really help you tie all this together and actually put it into action. He gives this really, I think, such a brilliant tool. It's like a one-page advertising plan.
Oh, I love those really concise frameworks.
Yeah, it's super simple, but it's so effective.
Yeah. So it basically walks you through step by step. And the first step is identifying, your ideal customer.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Who are you actually trying to reach? What are their pain points? What are their goals? What motivates them?
Yeah, got to know your audience.
Exactly. And then from there, it's choosing your advertising method. So are you going to focus on warm outreach? Are you going to do content marketing, cold outreach, paid ads?
Or a combination.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And that's really going to depend on your business, your budget, your goals.
Choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And then step 3 is crafting that irresistible offer.
Right.
Or that lead magnet. So again, thinking about how are you addressing that specific pain point? How are you delivering immense value? How are you making it so easy for them to say yes?
Right. This is where the creativity comes in, too.
Sure.
Having that deep understanding of your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And then step 4 is advertise consistently. I think this is something that people, they forget that, building a $100 million lead machine, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
It's all about consistency, showing up day after day.
Yeah, so show up consistently, nurture those relationships, and you will see those results.
Yeah.
And then finally, none of this matters if you're not analyzing the results.
Right.
So always be tracking, be measuring, be testing, and then adjusting your approach based on, what's actually happening.
So it's that iterative process that I think is so crucial.
Yeah, because you're never really done. You're always learning. You're always adapting.
For sure. For sure.
And I think, beyond all the specifics, like the real takeaway here, the big takeaway from $100 in leads is that it's really about adopting that long-term mindset, right? It's about focusing relentlessly on delivering value and then using systems and, frankly, other people's audiences to really amplify your reach.
So it's about building something sustainable, something that's really rooted in, like, providing value.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then having that, like, ripple effect where it kind of goes out from there.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And I think, one final thought to leave you with is that he talks a lot about generosity.
Yeah.
We talked about it with the lead magnets, giving away like so much value up front. But I think it goes even beyond that. Like, how can you make generosity part of your company culture, your customer service, just like your brand identity?
It's like that feeling people get when they interact with you or your business.
Exactly.
That's a good point. Well, we've covered so much ground today. I feel like there's so much for everyone to like unpack and think about. But just remember, take it one step at a time. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
You got this.
Exactly. Focus on those relationships, provide that amazing value, and never stop learning, really.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this was great. I always love chatting with you. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, this is fun.